Her words cut through the chamber like a blade, deliberate, unflinching, unforgettable. For a split second, silence swallowed the room, as if even the walls were stunned. Then came the gasp, soft, sharp, collective. Hands lit up, fingers raised. And within moments, her line leaped from the committee floor to millions of screens. Memes sprouted, captions flew, and timelines roared. A single sentence had broken through the noise of politics and turned into the voice of a people long dismissed. A room full of silence, a nation full of noise. But to understand why this moment exploded, you need to see how it all began. The air in Washington was already thick with division. Every hearing a battlefield where reputations were forged or destroyed in real time. Into this arena stepped Jasmine Crockett, a freshman lawmaker, still underestimated by many, still dismissed by those who believed seniority equaled superiority. She carried not just her own name, but the weight of every community that had been told to wait their turn, to quiet their voice, to swallow their pride. Across from her sat Alan Dershowitz, a seasoned legal mind whose reputation was built on courtroom theatrics and intellectual swagger. To his admirers, he was a brilliant defender of constitutional law. To his critics, he was a manipulator skilled at bending logic until it served his purpose. And on this day, he saw Crockett as an easy target, young, direct, a woman of color. Standing in a chamber where arrogance often dressed itself as authority, but this wasn't about a single bill or technicality. For Crockett, the stakes ran deeper. It was about identity, dignity, and the right to exist in these halls without bowing to the smug grin of elitism. The cameras rolled. The audience leaned closer, and with one smug smile, Dershowitz made his move. For decades, Alan Dershowitz has been a name that carried weight in America's legal and political arenas. A celebrated Harvard professor, he wrote books that shaped generations of students and stood in courtrooms where the nation's most sensational cases were fought. His sharp mind, relentless arguments, and taste for the spotlight earned him both fame and infamy. To admirers, he was the defender of constitutional purity, the guardian of unpopular causes. To critics, he was the embodiment of arrogance, an intellectual giant who often used his height not to lift others, but to tower above them. The pattern was familiar. Corner opponents with rapid-fire reasoning, overwhelm them with references, and leave them scrambling under the weight of his confidence. He rarely debated to understand, he debated to dominate. And more often than not, it worked. Politicians, pundits, even seasoned lawyers often wilted under the force of his dismissive tone and condescending smirk. Yet the brilliance that built his pedestal was shadowed by controversies that chipped away at its foundation. His ties to powerful figures, his unapologetic defenses of the indefensible, and his knack for framing opponents as ignorant left him as polarizing as he was prominent. The higher his pedestal, the harder the fall. But this time, his old tricks wouldn't work. Jasmine Crockett's story does not begin in the polished corridors of Congress. It begins in a working-class community where resilience was not a choice, but a way of life. Raised in a family that believed in hard work, fairness, and the dignity of service, she learned early that voices like hers were too often ignored in the rooms where decisions were made. She carried those lessons with her through classrooms, through courtrooms, through every step of a career that demanded not just intelligence, but grit. Before she ever stood in front of cameras, she stood beside clients who had no one else. As a public defender, Crockett saw firsthand how the justice system could break people who didn't have the money or the power to fight back. She fought for them anyway. Every late night, every uphill battle, every victory wrestled from the jaws of doubt shaped a voice that would not be silenced. Her path was never smooth. She faced the sideways glances, the subtle dismissals, the constant reminder that the halls of power were designed to favor the few. But each obstacle only added steel to her spine. Her fire was not loud, not reckless. It was calm, deliberate. It was forged by struggle and sharpened by truth. By the time she entered public office, Crockett was more than a politician. She was the living embodiment of her community's persistence. She carried their hopes, their frustrations, their determination in every word she spoke. What many underestimated as inexperience was, in reality, a well of lived wisdom. She had no idea that today, her words would echo across America. And then the debate began. The exchange began with polite formality, but it didn't take long for the temperature to rise. Dershowitz leaned forward, voice clipped with authority, slicing into the discussion with interruptions that carried more condescension than substance. He framed his questions like traps, lacing them with complicated phrasing designed to corner and confuse. To the casual observer, it was the performance of a man convinced of his superiority, certain that intellect alone could bulldoze dignity. But Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She listened, measured, and waited. When she spoke, it was never rushed, never frantic. Each word was deliberate, each point anchored in clarity rather than arrogance. Her calmness contrasted sharply with Dershowitz's rising impatience. The room began to shift. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, sensing the stakes, feeling the crackle in the air. Every smirk from Dershowitz only magnified the anticipation. Would Crockett break under pressure, or would she rise above it? Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of expression, every pause heavy with suspense. The debate was no longer just an exchange of ideas. It was a battle of posture, pride, and perception. And then came the sentence that silenced the room. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the tension would snap the room in two. Dershowitz pressed forward, his words dripping with smug certainty, voice cutting across hers like a blade meant to silence. But Crockett didn't rush to respond. She let the moment breathe. She let the weight of his arrogance hang in the air until it became unbearable. Then, with a calmness that felt almost surgical, she leaned in and spoke. Her cadence was steady, her tone sharpened by conviction. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Each syllable carried with it the force of lived truth, each phrase striking with precision. Her eyes locked on him not in anger, but in unflinching resolve, and then came the line. It landed, like thunder wrapped in silk. It's a single sentence that cut through his carefully constructed wall of intellect and exposed the hollowness behind it. For once, Dershowitz had no comeback. His lips parted as if to respond, but nothing came. The practiced smirk slipped, his posture faltered, and the silence that followed was louder than any argument he could have made. The audience felt it instantly. Gasps, whispers, and then an eruption, applause, laughter, disbelief. Online, the clip began racing across timelines before the words had even fully faded from her lips. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a takedown, but the aftermath was bigger than anyone expected. Within minutes, the chamber's silence had transformed into the internet's roar. Crockett's line, clipped into a 10-second video, raced across platforms like wildfire. Hashtags bloomed, climbing to the top of trending lists. Memes captured Dershowitz's stunned expression, paired with captions that mocked his arrogance. TikTok remixes, Twitter threads, and Instagram reels spun the moment into a cultural flashpoint. Commentators couldn't look away. Progressive voices hailed it as the embodiment of truth cutting through elitism. Even centrist analysts admitted it was a rare display of composure overpowering condescension. Late-night hosts teased it in their monologues. Celebrities reposted it with fire emojis and words of solidarity. The ripple was undeniable. Meanwhile, Dershowitz became the punchline of the hour, his carefully curated image reduced to a still frame of defeat. Crockett, in contrast, was elevated. She was no longer just a rising lawmaker. She had become a symbol. A truth-teller whose calm fire resonated far beyond political lines. It was clear this was more than just a debate moment. It was a cultural marker, a shift in who gets to define power in public discourse. And yet, beyond the memes, a deeper message emerged. In the days that followed, Crockett was asked again and again how she managed to stay so calm in the face of such condescension. Her answer was simple: dignity is not negotiable. While Dershowitz wielded arrogance like a weapon, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone grounded in service. He leaned on status, she leaned on truth. And in the end, truth rang louder. Her clapback was more than a clever retort. It was a reminder that composure can be revolutionary, that you don't need to shout to dismantle arrogance, that when arrogance collides with dignity, dignity endures. Across communities, the moment became a mirror for anyone who had ever been underestimated, interrupted, or dismissed. Crockett's calm defiance said what so many had felt but rarely seen represented: you belong, and your truth matters. It became larger than a viral video. It became cultural symbolism, proof that the arc of public discourse can bend toward justice when someone refuses to shrink, and that's why this viral moment will never be forgotten. Alan Dershowitz tried to outwit Jasmine Crockett, armed with decades of experience and the arrogance of certainty. But with one line delivered with calm, Crockett turned the tables. His performance crumbled, hers ignited, and the world saw it happen in real time. What was meant to diminish her only